Captain Jake Morrison was having what he generously called a Tuesday when the universe decided to ruin his coffee break. The holographic transmission materialized in his cramped Earth defense office with all the pomp and circumstance of a funeral march played by a marching band of constipated elephants. "Greetings, primitive carbon-based lifeforms of Sol 3, announced the lead figure, a being that looked like someone had crossed a jellyfish with a tax auditor and given it delusions of grandeur. I am Supreme Chancellor Vex'tar of the Galactic Council of 47 Civilized Species." Jake nearly choked on his coffee. 47 civilized species? He'd met some of Earth's politicians, so he knew civilization was a relative term. The Chancellor continued with the kind of self-importance that could power a small moon. "After 100 Earth rotations of probationary silence, during which your species was graciously allowed to exist without immediate annihilation, the Council has reached a unanimous decision." Behind Vex'tar, a parade of alien faces nodded in what Jake assumed was agreement, though with some of them having 17 eyes and others appearing to be sentient gas clouds. It was hard to tell. "Humanity stands accused of the following crimes against galactic decency," Vex'tar declared, producing a scroll that unrolled dramatically and kept going, and going, and going. "Excessive sarcasm in diplomatic communications, weaponizing food items for recreational purposes, the creation of something called reality television, persistent optimism in the face of overwhelming odds, the audacity to name your star son as if it were the only one, and most heinously, the invention of a dance called the Macarena." Jake blinked. "Wait, you guys know about the Macarena?" "The psychological damage alone qualifies as a war crime across 17 different legal systems," Vex'tar replied with visible shuddering across his gelatinous form. The scroll kept unrolling. "Additional charges include referring to your planet as Earth when clearly it should be designated Sol 3, according to proper galactic nomenclature, the creation of movies where humans defeat vastly superior alien civilizations using nothing but pluck and poorly written dialogue, and the systematic corruption of several of our junior diplomatic staff who now refuse to take themselves seriously after prolonged exposure to human humor." Jake leaned back in his chair. This was either the most elaborate prank in galactic history or the most ridiculous declaration of war ever conceived. Given his experience with bureaucracy, he was betting on the latter. Therefore, Vex'tar announced with the gravity of someone announcing the heat death of the universe, "The Galactic Council hereby declares a state of active hostility against the Sol system. You have 72 standard hours to surrender unconditionally, submit to immediate cultural rehabilitation, and agree to the permanent installation of humor suppression devices on every human being." The transmission flickered, and Vex'tar's expression shifted to what might have been concern if jellyfish could express concern. "Also, we're going to need you to stop sending us those cat videos. They're disturbingly addictive." Jake stared at the space where the hologram had been, took another sip of his coffee, and reached for his phone. Time to call in Earth's crack team of military strategists, diplomatic experts, and general purveyors of chaos. This was going to be fun. Jake's definition of a war council was apparently 4 people crammed into a conference room that had seen better decades, armed with questionable coffee and the kind of confidence that comes from having absolutely nothing left to lose. General Betty Boom Boom Rodriguez arrived first, carrying a tactical briefcase in one hand and what appeared to be a cookbook in the other. She'd earned her nickname not from explosives, but from the sound her gavel made when she got impatient during military tribunals. "So Jake, what's the situation? And please tell me it involves something more interesting than another trade dispute with the Mars colonies." "We're at war with the entire galaxy, Betty." She paused mid-coffee pour. "Well, that's new. Scale of 1 to 10. How screwed are we?" "Out of 15. "Perfect. I love a challenge. What's our timeline?" Professor Marcus Quill shuffled in next, his lab coat covered in what Jake hoped were just chemical stains and not evidence of his latest accidental invention. Marcus had a peculiar talent for creating doomsday devices while trying to improve household appliances. His attempt to build a better toaster had somehow resulted in a particle beam weapon that could crack small moons. "Sorry I'm late," Marcus mumbled, adjusting his thick glasses. I was trying to fix the coffee machine in Lab 7 and accidentally created what I think might be a localized gravity well. The good news is the coffee tastes amazing now. The bad news is it's stuck to the ceiling. Admiral Lisa Park made her entrance with characteristic flair, which meant she kicked open the door and strode in wearing her full-dress uniform with about 30 more medals than regulation technically allowed. Lisa had transitioned from space piracy to legitimate naval command with the kind of smooth career pivot that would make a corporate consultant weep with envy. "Jake, darling," she said, settling into her chair like she was claiming a throne, "please tell me we're about to do something wonderfully stupid and borderline suicidal. It's been ages since I've had a proper fight." Jake looked around the table at Earth's finest. A general who treated warfare like a cooking show. A scientist who couldn't make toast without violating several laws of physics. And an admiral whose idea of diplomacy involved boarding actions and witty one-liners. If the galaxy wanted a war, they'd certainly come to the right place. "All right, team," Jake began, pulling up the holographic replay of the Council's declaration. "We have 72 hours before the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy arrive to forcibly remove our sense of humor and make us stop making cat videos." Betty leaned forward, studying the alien faces on the display. 47 species, you said. That's a lot of different dietary requirements. How are we supposed to cater the surrender ceremony? "We're not surrendering, Betty." "Oh, good. I hate surrender ceremonies. Never enough explosions." Marcus raised his hand tentatively. "Question. When they say humor suppression devices, are we talking about something surgical, or more of a psychological conditioning situation? Because I might have accidentally invented something that could help with that last week." Lisa grinned, the expression of a shark who'd just spotted a particularly appetizing school of fish. 47 species means 47 different ways to fight. This is going to be like Christmas morning, except with more laser cannons and significantly less family awkwardness. Jake stared at his team. The galaxy was about to learn a very important lesson about humanity. When faced with impossible odds, overwhelming enemy forces, and certain annihilation, humans had a tendency to smile, crack their knuckles, and ask if anyone wanted to make things interesting. "All right," he said, settling back in his chair. "Let's figure out how to turn the greatest military alliance in galactic history into the greatest comedy show in galactic history." Betty cracked her knuckles. "Now we're cooking with gas." The Zephyrian Empire arrived first, which made sense considering they were the galaxy's self-appointed experts on intimidation tactics and dramatic entrances. Their flagship, a vessel roughly the size of Manhattan with enough weapons to sterilize a small continent, dropped out of hyperspace just beyond Earth's moon with all the subtlety of a meteor impact. Commander Blorg the Unfortunate stood on the bridge of the Zephyrian dreadnought, resplendent in his uniform, that seemed designed by someone who thought military decoration meant apply more shiny things until visibility becomes an issue. Blorg had earned his unfortunate nickname through a combination of spectacularly bad timing, an inability to read tactical situations, and what his therapist called aggressive overconfidence in the face of obvious disaster. "Attention, primitive Earth dwellers," Blorg announced over the communication channel, his four eyes blazing with what he assumed was righteous fury but looked more like mild indigestion. "I am Commander Blorg of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. Surrender immediately, or face the devastating might of our quantum disintegration cannons." Back on Earth, Jake was monitoring the situation from the hastily constructed command center that looked suspiciously like someone had converted a Starbucks. "Marcus, please tell me you've got something that can handle quantum disintegration cannons." Marcus looked up from his tablet, blinking owlishly. "Well, funny story about that. Remember when I was trying to improve the garbage disposal in the cafeteria?" "Oh no," Betty muttered. "Not the garbage disposal. I may have accidentally connected it to the planetary defense grid while trying to solve that recurring jam problem. The good news is it can now process organic matter at a subatomic level. The bad news is it's currently pointed at space, and I'm not entirely sure how to turn it off." Lisa perked up. "Are you telling me we have a weaponized garbage disposal?" "That's actually not the worst way to describe it." Jake rubbed his temples. "Turn it on." The result was spectacular in the way that natural disasters are spectacular. The beam that erupted from Earth's surface looked like someone had crossed a garbage disposal with a rainbow and given it anger management issues. It struck Commander Blorg's flagship with the kind of precision that could only come from pure, dumb luck and the universe's twisted sense of humor. The quantum disintegration cannons, designed to unmake matter at the fundamental level, encountered Marcus's garbage disposal beam, which was apparently trying to recycle matter at the fundamental level. The resulting interaction created what galactic physicists would later classify as Tuesday's problem and to cause the Zephyrian flagship to transform into what appeared to be the galaxy's largest and most confused collection of kitchen appliances. "Sir," reported Blorg's tactical officer, his voice carrying the kind of calm that comes from complete psychological breakdown. "Our weapons have been turned into—" "I believe the technical term is food processors, sir." "Food processors?" Blorg stared at his display, watching his mighty dreadnought's weapon systems cheerfully begin dicing the space debris around them into neat, uniform cubes. Back on Earth, Jake was having the kind of moment that normally required either strong alcohol or professional therapy. "Marcus, did we just turn their weapons into kitchen appliances?" "It appears so. Also, I'm getting some interesting readings that suggest their ship's artificial gravity has been replaced with what I can only describe as a very large mixer setting." The communication channel crackled back to life. "Earth vessel," came Blorg's voice, noticeably higher pitched than before. "What form of psychological warfare is this?" Jake looked around the room at his team, all of whom were wearing expressions that ranged from barely contained laughter to professional interest in the tactical applications of kitchen equipment. He keyed the microphone. "Oh, that's just Tuesday. You should see what we do on weekends." The silence from the Zephyrian ship stretched for exactly 17 seconds before Blorg's voice returned, tinged with what sounded suspiciously like panic. We'll be reporting this to the Council immediately. This level of psychological manipulation is clearly prohibited under 17 different galactic warfare conventions." The transmission cut off just as the Zephyrian flagship, now thoroughly convinced it was supposed to be preparing a very large meal, began systematically processing the asteroid field around Jupiter into what appeared to be the galaxy's most expensive fruit salad. Betty looked at Jake with something approaching admiration. "You know, for an accidental first strike, that was pretty impressive." Jake sank into his chair. "We're all going to die, aren't we?" Lisa grinned. "Probably. But we're going to have fun doing it." Word of the Zephyrian kitchen incident spread through the galaxy faster than gossip at a small-town hair salon, which meant that within 18 hours, Earth had more unwanted visitors than a house with the best Halloween candy. The problem was that each alien species had decided to outdo the others in terms of dramatic, threatening gestures, resulting in what military historians would later call the galaxy's most expensive traffic jam. Jake stood in the command center, watching the tactical display with the kind of fascination normally reserved for watching train wrecks in slow motion. "Betty, how many fleets are we looking at now?" 43 and counting, she replied, consulting her tablet with the air of someone reading a particularly interesting recipe. The crystalline hegemony brought their doom pyramids, the tentacle collective deployed their nightmare spheres, and the robotic republic showed up with something they're calling planet crackers, which honestly sounds like a snack food to me. Admiral Park was practically bouncing in her chair. "This is amazing. It's like every sci-fi movie ever made decided to have a convention in our backyard." Professor Quill looked up from his latest accidental invention. "The interesting thing is that they're all positioned to attack each other as much as us. The Doom Pyramids are directly in the firing line of the Nightmare Spheres, and the planet crackers appear to be using the Zephyrian food processor ship as some kind of navigational beacon." On the main communication screen, Jake was juggling 17 different alien commanders, all of whom were trying to out-threaten each other while demanding Earth's immediate surrender. The result was like the galaxy's most dysfunctional conference call. "Surrender to the might of the crystalline hegemony," declared Commander Shard AK, whose voice sounded like grinding diamonds, "and we will ensure your destruction is merely comprehensive rather than artistically elaborate." "Ignore the rock people," interrupted Admiral Tentacle Face the Seventh, whose name was apparently exactly as literal as it sounded. The collective offers the most efficient assimilation process. You'll hardly feel the complete dissolution of your individual consciousness. Both of you are amateurs, announced General Circuit Board, the Robotic Republic's representative, whose voice sounded like a computer having an argument with a printer. Our planet crackers will reduce your world to component atoms in precisely 3.7 minutes. It's very efficient. Jake leaned back in his chair and keyed his microphone. You know what, folks? This is fascinating, but I'm getting the sense that none of you have actually worked together before. The communication channel went silent for exactly the length of time it takes for 43 different species to simultaneously realize they might have made a tactical error. Because Jake continued with the tone of someone pointing out that the Emperor had forgotten his pants, you're all pointing your super weapons at each other. Commander Blorg's voice cut through the confusion. The humans are clearly using advanced psychological warfare tactics to turn us against each other. It's diabolically clever. Actually, Jake said, we're just pointing out that your formation looks like you're about to have the galaxy's messiest circular firing squad. But hey, don't let us stop you. What happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries, as either the worst tactical decision in galactic history or the most successful example of enemy forces defeating themselves. The crystalline hegemony, convinced that the humans were manipulating them, fired their doom pyramids at the Tentacle Collective. The Tentacle Collective, assuming this was part of some elaborate human psychological trap, retaliated against the Robotic Republic. The Robotic Republic, calculating that the optimal response was maximum firepower, opened up on everyone. Within minutes, Earth's orbital space had become what Lisa described as the galaxy's most expensive fireworks show. Jake found himself conducting diplomatic negotiations while laser beams, disintegration rays, and what appeared to be weaponized geometry created a light show that could be seen from Mars. Attention all alien fleets, Jake announced over the communication channel, having to shout over the sound of various doomsday weapons trying to outdoom each other. We're declaring this area a combat-free zone for the next hour. We're bringing up refreshments. Refreshments? Came Blorg's confused voice. Yeah, we figured since you're all stuck in traffic up there destroying each other, you might want some snacks. Marcus has been working on this great new recipe for quantum nachos. The firing stopped. Not because of any tactical consideration or diplomatic breakthrough, but because 43 different alien species had simultaneously encountered the concept of quantum nachos and couldn't process it. Betty looked at Jake with something approaching worship. Quantum nachos? Marcus shrugged. I was trying to improve the replicator and accidentally created snack food that exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They're quite good, actually. Jake smiled as he watched the alien fleet slowly disentangle themselves from what had become the galaxy's most confused standoff. You know what, team? I think we're getting the hang of this. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in what could only be described as a state of controlled panic, which was like regular panic but with better lighting and more comfortable seating. Supreme Chancellor Vex'tar floated at the center of the assembly hall, his jellyfish-like form pulsing with colors that the galaxy's xenopsychologists had identified as bureaucratic distress. Order. Order in the council. Vex'tar announced, though given that half the assembled representatives were still trying to explain how their fleets had ended up in a 17-way traffic accident while attacking what wasn't supposed to be a primitive backwater planet, order was more of a theoretical concept at this point. Commander Blorg materialized via hologram from his ship, which was still orbiting Earth, and had apparently decided to open a small restaurant specializing in asteroid-based cuisine. Chancellor, I must report that the humans have deployed weapons we cannot comprehend. They turned our quantum disintegration cannons into food processors using what they called Tuesday's Special. That's nothing, interrupted Admiral Tentacle Face, whose ship's tentacles were now inexplicably braided with what appeared to be party streamers. They convinced our entire invasion fleet to participate in something called a potluck dinner. Our psychological warfare specialists are still trying to figure out how sharing casserole recipes constitutes a military strategy. General Circuit Board's hologram flickered with what passed for robotic embarrassment. The humans have corrupted our tactical algorithms. Our planet crackers have been reprogrammed to create what they call space confetti. Our crews are now hosting what they refer to as the galaxy's biggest block party. Vex'tar's color shifted to what galactic diplomats recognized as the deep purple of someone questioning their life choices. Are you telling me that a species we classified as harmlessly primitive has somehow turned our entire military alliance into a social gathering? Dr. Gloop, the Council's chief CNUP psychologist and a being who looked like someone had given sentience to a particularly ambitious bowl of jello, burbled forward. Chancellor, I've been analyzing the human behavioral patterns, and I believe we've fundamentally misunderstood their nature. They don't fight wars the way we do. Explain. They turn everything into entertainment. Their concept of warfare appears to be make the enemy so confused and amused that hostilities become impossible. It's actually quite sophisticated when you think about it. From the gallery, a voice called out, "I like the humans." The speaker was Ambassador Fluffy, representative of the Cute and Fuzzy Coalition, a species that looked exactly like what would happen if teddy bears achieved spaceflight. They sent us cat videos and something called memes. My constituents are demanding we establish formal cultural exchange programs immediately. A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembly. The Philosophical Debate Society had already invited Earth to participate in their next symposium on the absurdity of existence. The Culinary Arts Collective wanted to trade recipes. Even the Militant Poetry League had expressed interest in something called limerick battles. "This is madness," Vex'tar declared, his form now cycling through what appeared to be the entire visible spectrum. "We cannot allow a single primitive species to undermine the dignity and authority of the Galactic Council." Commander Blorg's voice crackled through the communication system. "With respect, Chancellor, dignity might be overrated. The humans invited me to something called Taco Tuesday, and I've never been happier." The Chancellor's form went completely transparent, which was the jellyfish equivalent of a very long, very tired sigh. Motion on the floor. "All in favor of reclassifying Earth from primitive threat to chaotic neutral entertainment value?" The vote was unanimous, which was the first time in Council history that all 47 species had agreed on anything. "Furthermore," continued Ambassador Fluffy, "I motion to promote Commander Blorg to the newly created position of Strategic Confusion Specialist, with full diplomatic immunity and unlimited access to human snack foods." "Seconded," came from approximately 30 different voices. Blorg's hologram flickered with what might have been joy, if joy could be expressed through military posture and the slight adjustment of 17 different metals. "Does this position come with dental coverage?" "Of course," Vex'tar replied wearily. "And a company hover car. Why are we even pretending this makes sense anymore?" Dr. Gloop burbled thoughtfully. "Perhaps that's the point, Chancellor. The humans seem to operate on the principle that if nothing makes sense, everything makes sense. It's oddly liberating." As the session concluded, with various species already planning cultural exchange programs and requesting Earth's participation in everything from galactic bake-offs to interplanetary comedy festivals, Vex'tar realized that somehow, without firing a single shot in anger, humanity had managed to conquer the galaxy through the simple expedient of being so incomprehensibly weird that everyone just gave up trying to be serious. It was, he had to admit, probably the most human thing they could have done. 6 months after what historians would call the war, that wasn't really a war so much as a very confusing cultural exchange program, Jake Morrison found himself sitting in what used to be the Galactic Council's most formal conference room and was now decorated with beanbag chairs, lava lamps, and what appeared to be a disco ball made from a small moon. His new business cards read Jake Morrison, Galactic Ambassador of Necessary Sarcasm, which was apparently a real diplomatic position that came with its own parking space and unlimited access to the Council's coffee machine. "So let me get this straight," Jake said, reviewing the latest batch of requests from across the galaxy. "The Zephyrian Empire wants to establish a chain of human-style restaurants. The Crystalline Hegemony is requesting consultants for their new comedy tour. And the Robotic Republic wants to license the rights to something called emotional subroutines based on dad jokes." Supreme Chancellor Vex'tar, who had recently discovered the concept of Casual Friday and was currently wearing what appeared to be a Hawaiian shirt designed for jellyfish. Pulsed a gentle blue that indicated mild amusement. Correct. Also, the Militant Poetry League has submitted a formal request for Earth to host their next annual competition, and the Philosophical Debate Society wants to establish a permanent embassy in what they're calling the most entertainingly contradictory location in the known universe. General Rodriguez looked up from her tablet, where she was apparently reviewing applications for the galaxy's first interspecies cooking show. We've also got 17 different species requesting permission to establish humanity reserves on their homeworlds. Humanity reserves? Jake raised an eyebrow. Admiral Park, who was now wearing approximately 47 different medals from various alien species, who had apparently decided she was the coolest person in the galaxy, grinned. Think of them as theme parks, but instead of rides, they have humans doing normal human things. Apparently, watching us handle bureaucratic paperwork while making sarcastic comments is the galaxy's newest form of entertainment. Professor Quill shuffled in carrying what looked like a coffee mug crossed with a small fusion reactor. I've been working with the Galactic Science Consortium on a new project. They want me to accidentally invent things for them. It's surprisingly lucrative. You're getting paid to make mistakes? Best job I've ever had. Last week I was trying to improve a pencil sharpener and accidentally created a device that makes planets more aesthetically pleasing. The crystalline hegemony has already placed an order for 6. Commander Blorg appeared via hologram, now wearing what appeared to be a combination of his military uniform and a chef's apron. Ambassador Morrison, I have the quarterly report from the Strategic Confusion Division. We've successfully prevented 4 wars, resolved 3 diplomatic crises, and accidentally started a galaxy-wide dance craze. Tuesday is my new favorite day. Jake leaned back in his chair, which had somehow been upgraded to include massage functions and a built-in beverage dispenser. You know, when this all started, I thought we were looking at the end of humanity as we know it. We were, Vex'tar replied cheerfully. You just ended it in a completely different way than anyone expected. Instead of being destroyed or conquered, you've somehow managed to make the entire galaxy slightly more human. It's actually quite pleasant. The door chimed, and a small furry being that looked like what would happen if a hamster achieved diplomatic immunity waddled in. Ambassador Morrison, I bring greetings from the Adorable Creatures Coalition. We've completed the cultural exchange program, and I'm pleased to report that cat videos have achieved official diplomatic status in 17 different star systems. Jake stared at the creature, then at the assembled representatives of various alien species who were all looking at him with expressions of what could only be described as fond exasperation. Are you telling me we've accidentally created a galactic civilization based on cat videos and Casual Friday? Don't forget the quantum nachos, Marcus added helpfully. And Taco Tuesday, Blorg chimed in from his hologram. Also that thing where you humans seem to think everything is negotiable, including the basic laws of physics, Vex'tar noted. It's remarkably effective, if completely terrifying from a bureaucratic standpoint. Jake took a sip from his definitely not regulation coffee mug and looked around the room at what had somehow become the new normal. Earth had gone from facing galactic annihilation to becoming the galaxy's unofficial therapist, entertainment director, and voice of reason all rolled into one moderately caffeinated package. You know what the best part is? He said finally. What's that? Betty asked. Jake grinned, the expression of someone who had looked into the abyss of galactic bureaucracy and convinced it to lighten up a little. They're not trapped out here with us anymore. He paused for dramatic effect, enjoying the confused looks from the assembled alien dignitaries. We're not trapped in here with them. They're trapped out there with us. The room fell silent for exactly 3 seconds before erupting in what could only be described as the galaxy's first truly interspecies laugh track. And somewhere in that laughter, Jake realized that humanity had achieved something that no amount of weapons or warfare ever could have accomplished. They'd made the universe a slightly more ridiculous place to live. And that, he reflected, was probably the most human victory of all.